This project began as an idea proposed by my then 21-year-old son, who over dinner one winter night said, "You know, Dad, we should build a small cabin on the lake this summer. It'd be a great place for guests to stay during hunting season so they don't have to sleep in the barn." I knew this would be a rather large undertaking, likely much more than a casual few weekends over the summer, but I threw caution and aged wisdom to the side and agreed to give it a go. Running electricity to the site would be a very costly and challenging issue, as the site's over a mile from the nearest road. The cabin would have to be off the grid, which added a whole new dimension to the challenge of building the cabin. But once built, it offered yet another challenge of living without electricity from the grid. Such begins this journey, and it generally starts with an idea and culminates with a finished project. In order to begin, you need a building site. In my case, it was about a mile off the road, and the only access to it was on a small little 2-track. All my materials would have to come in and out on an ATV and a small trailer that gets pulled behind it. Next come your plans. My recommendation is that you put your measurements down on paper so that you have something to follow, and most of your calculations are done in advance. After that, I suggest that you actually cut out little cutouts of the parameters of your cabin, put it down on paper as shown so that you can get a relative feel for where your windows will go, where your stove will go, where your bunk and bed will go. This will give you a good feel for how spacious and how everything fits. This shown here is not my actual finished plan, but it gives an idea of what it looked like as I went through this process. Next come your layout, where you'll install your support posts that are going to support the entire structure. I marked them out on the ground and then used a PTO drive on a tractor to drill these holes. Where I'm situated in northern Michigan, we need about 48 inches below ground. So my holes had to be dug using my post driller, but had to be finished using a hand post hole digger. That was quite a bit of work, but once it was done, you ended up with everything exactly the way it was, and you didn't have to worry about frost heaving in the winter. I should mention all the wood on this project was cut with a 3,500 watt gasoline powered generator, and most of the nailing was done with pass load framing nailer, which I highly recommend. An investment well made. Here you might wonder why the posts in the front are so much taller than the others. The reason is those are actually going to support the roof off of my front porch. The other just support the floor and the structure of the cabin itself, but the longer posts are for the porch. The only significant mishap we had in the construction of the cabin was the jackknife of an ATV with a heavy trailer behind it going down a rather steep hill. This is what it looks like. Fortunately, no one was hurt, and no equipment was seriously damaged in the process. Here you'll see the insulation of the floor. You'll notice we used 2 different types of materials. You might ask why. Sometimes compromise is an easy way to settle disputes between those that are helping you on a project. The messiest part of the job for sure was crawling underneath the structure to install plywood to keep the insulation from falling through the floor. Thank you, Craig, for doing this. Time for the walls to go up. Now the sheeting goes on. Now time for the ridge beam to go on. And now the roof joists. You may notice in several of the photos that there's a scaffold inside the cabin. This made a lot of the work inside a lot easier. You may want to rent one or borrow one from a friend if you know somebody that has one. Now the purlins go on the roof joists. One morning on the job site we found that a local beaver decided to make dinner out of one of the legs from one of our ladders. Next we'll cut holes in the sheeting for our windows. If there's one thing I've learned from this project is sometimes things take a very long time to do. Patience is a virtue, and be sure to make time to just lay back, look at the sky, and soak it all up. I couldn't wait for the roof to finally go on. The part of this project I disliked the most was boxing out the soffits, but I was able to struggle through it and get it done. You start to feel like things are really coming together when your windows and doors are installed and you start to put on your front porch. Autumn is a good time to start the insulation work on the inside of the cabin. Thank you, Craig, for putting in the stairs. Here you'll see the floor joists are installed for the loft. Heating the cabin comes from a boxwood stove. It's placed on top of cinder blocks as shown, and the ductwork is run through the wall and then up the outside of the cabin. Okay, so now a word about solar. I use two 100-watt solar panels which charge a deep cycle solar battery via charge controller. The solar panels can be acquired via multiple online sources, and the battery I purchased from Amazon. Make sure that you use a solar charger to prevent overcharging of the battery. The entire system cost me right around $900, and that does not include the cost that I paid for my 12-volt fixtures, which I purchased on eBay. Most of my lighting is very low amperage LED lights similar to this, and I used a switch panel which I purchased from eBay to control the lights so they could be turned on and off individually. It's been 2 years running now, and I've used the cabin for as much as a week at a time, and I've never dropped my battery storage below 70%. You can even include a ceiling fan like I have used here, which is 12 volt and also runs on very low amperage. The key is to use low amperage fixtures. You can even buy these 12 volt strip lights, which are very efficient and very low cost. They cost about $5 a piece. After all the insulation is done, then you can start putting on the sheathing on your walls and finish up your electric. One of the things that I did as well is I used these 12 volt chargers that you can plug a cigarette lighter into, as well as USB ports. I strategically put these around the cabin where the bunks are going to be so that people can charge their cell phones, etc. at night. I put concrete board and lathing behind the wood stove and then stoned it in using river rock to prevent a fire protective barrier between the wood stove and the wall. I used tongue and groove laminate flooring for the loft and then mixed it up and used a slightly different brand for the main cabin area. Here you'll see I used steel roofing as wainscoting on the walls at the end of the cabin that's near the wood stove. This adds a nice warm feeling and reflects some of that heat. It also keeps it cool and makes it feel cool during the summer months. Next comes the painting of the exterior boards. I used a 3-coat system, a primer followed by 2 top coats. It gives it a very nice warm look to it. The product I use is from Sikkens called Cetal. A nice rainy day is a good day to build some bunk frames, and these I just assembled together using dimensional lumber and a power planer. The power planer gives it a nice distressed look. You may have noticed there's a black strip between the moisture barrier and the siding. That black strip is kind of a woven plastic mesh that helps the siding breathe and prevent moisture buildup behind it. Whether or not it'll actually work is yet to be seen, and I will probably never know in my lifetime. Here's a good look at my solar battery, and as you can see, I built it underneath my kitchen cabinet. These light fixtures on either side of the door are just regular 120 volt fixtures, and inside of them I put a 12 volt light bulb that fits into the same socket. You can obtain that on eBay as well.